Don't take no for an answer is the first thing you're taught when you get into sales. But what if I told you that tactic will always come back to bite you later? In this episode, I'm breaking down how that old school mindset is quietly eroding trust with your customers, and how learning to pause instead of push can actually help you close more sales. Most sales podcasts give you more tactics. This one proves you don't need them. I'm Rebecca Kilday, and this is Don't Just Sell, the podcast where your sales career gets easier when you quit selling like you've been trained and start selling like yourself. So often, one of the first pieces of sales advice you get is to not take no for an answer. It doesn't matter what the specific objection is from your prospect, you just don't stop. Plow forward no matter what they're telling you. I'm here to tell you this mindset backfires more often than not. So come with me. Years ago, in 2000, probably 6 or 7, I was just starting out my sales career for a major yearbook publisher. So my job was to sell yearbooks to schools, and I met with administrators and teachers whose job it was to make the decision for who the yearbook publisher was for that year for the school. And keep in mind, a school can only have one yearbook publisher at a time, so the industry was surprisingly competitive. Well, there's this one school, a country school, as most of my customers were in the middle of nowhere in Southeast Tennessee. And I really wanted to work with this yearbook advisor. I liked her. I felt like we had good rapport. And I could tell as I was meeting with her that she felt the same way about me. So we talked about it openly, as you always should. This is what the price looks like to publish with my company. And it was more expensive than she was used to doing. She looked at the numbers, and there was a gap between the price where she wanted to sell the yearbooks to the students and what the final invoice would be. So typically when that happens, if you look in your kids' yearbooks right now, they may have advertisements in the back of the book. If you see that, that means that they're using that money to close the gap between what they're charging to families and what the actual invoice is from their yearbook company. So I convinced her that this is what she could do to close the gap of what my higher price was going to be. I knew in my heart that it was not going to be a good fit, and I can give you a couple of reasons why. Number one is she had never sold ads before, so this would be a whole new responsibility that she would be taking on without ever having done it before. And number two is this town was really small. And people who advertise in yearbooks are small business owners. It's very uncommon for big corporations to advertise in school yearbooks. So you really have to have a small business community robust enough for you to be able to go out and sell the advertising. And I knew that they just didn't have that. And I should have been more accepting of the fact that she was hesitant. And she even voiced, I don't think we can afford this. She said it out loud. And instead of finding a way to work together in a way that would have been mutually beneficial, I just steamed forward ahead because I had this number in my head that I knew I needed to get from that sale. She looked uncomfortable with it. And I ignored it, and I pushed forward because I really needed this sale. So, for me, when I signed a new customer, and she did sign with me, it means I'm taking on that responsibility of making sure that yearbook got completed and published on time and for the price that I told her. So I worked with her all year, met with her many times over the year to make sure that the project was being managed correctly, and we continued to grow our professional relationship. And at the end of the year, just as I suspected, she could not afford the final invoice. She was not able to sell the ads that would have been enough to make up the difference, and she was left in a budget shortfall. And when I went to talk to her and we had to have that conversation, I could feel She was kind enough not to say it, but I could feel her looking at me and wanting to say, I told you this would happen, and you let me do it anyway. And so it was my responsibility to figure out what to do. I was an independent sales rep, and so this budget was on me. No company was coming to bail me out. So what I wound up doing was discounting the invoice to make sure that she could pay it. But I had to discount it below the level where I made any commission. So I worked with that account for that entire year for free. And I learned a lot from the experience that I had with that advisor. It hurt me in a couple of ways. Number one, it eroded the trust that I had built with her. And it really made me feel awful that I hadn't been a good steward when she was trying to tell me that she had this objection for a reason, and I just bulldozed through it. And the other thing it did was made me aware that I could have worked with her more collaboratively to find a way to have her be able to work with me and with my company without having a budget shortfall. So the real problem is when you steamroll prospects when they're giving you objections, is the main thing is it makes you sound combative and inconsiderate, and you're just undermining that trust. I was lucky that she liked me enough to move forward with an agreement, but the truth of the matter is she should have recognized that I was ignoring her telling me that she wasn't comfortable. And instead of showing that I was willing to be collaborative, I just plowed through and ignored what she said so that I could make my sale. After that experience, I started to listen closely to my prospects' objections. Maybe they did have a true objection, like affordability or needing to talk to someone about the decision. Or maybe they know they're just not a good fit, and you need to save your time and go talk to someone else. But you don't know unless you do these two things. And the first one is to acknowledge their objections and ask for more detail. This is going to provide a window into their buying motives and the decision-making process as a whole. So instead of simply ignoring an objection like, I need to talk to my spouse about it, you can say, of course, I talk to my spouse about big budget decisions too. What part do you think they'll be more hesitant about? What part do you think they'll be the most excited about? This gives you the opportunity to have an open discussion about your product even further and gives you insight into the viability of the sale. And the other thing I want you to do is to collaborate on solutions for their objections. This is your opportunity to show your prospect that you're on their team. You don't want them to make a decision they're not comfortable with, so you work together to find a way forward. After I realized these two things, I started to approach objections in a different way in my business. While I was still a yearbook rep, there was this one school I really wanted to work with, and you'll understand, a lot of times the hardest part of getting in to meet with a client is finding the right time and coordinating schedules. That's especially true of teachers. They have students with them most of the day. And you need to find a time when they are more open to meeting with a salesperson. For a lot of teachers, this is during their planning time. Planning time is when they don't have students in the classroom, and it's meant for classroom planning and grading and things like that. So, after meeting with the administration and getting clearance to meet with this teacher during her planning time, I set up several times to come during this planning time to meet with this yearbook teacher. And she accepted the appointment every time. She let me be in the room for like 5 minutes, and then she'd sort of usher me out. Okay, thanks for coming. See you next time. And I never really got to make much headway with her. I was starting to get frustrated, and then I realized there's got to be something behind this objection of just pushing me out the door. So the next time I went to her, once again, she was shooing me out after about 5 minutes. And I turned and I said, I just want to make sure, is this still a good time for me to come and call on you? And she said, actually, I don't know why the office even let you back here. This is the only time of day I get to eat. The only time of day she gets to eat? I had no idea. She never told me. Because I never asked. So of course she was pushing me out of the room. We collaborated, we found another time to meet, and that time I was able to show her why I thought our yearbook packages would benefit her and her school the most, and she agreed. Now you're probably wondering, how do you know when to listen to an objection versus when to push through? That's what I'm about to break down. But first, if you're recognizing yourself in these stories, this is exactly the shift that I help sales teams make. When you're ready to bring this conversation to your whole team, I've created an email template that you can send to your manager. Use the link in the show notes to download it. So now let me tell you about the shift in my mind that I underwent to get better at handling objections. I realized that sales is not a sprint. It's a marathon where your success is determined by your ability to cultivate long-term relationships. Don't sacrifice making a quick sale at the expense of your integrity. When you sell from a place of authenticity and partnership, your client will not only see that difference in you, they'll reward you with loyalty and advocacy that will long outweigh their contract volume. So let's do a script swap so you know what this would look like in practice. Instead of, I hear your concern about price, but let me show you why this is actually a great investment. If we break down the monthly cost and factor in the ROI, you'll realize this pays for itself. Plus, I can work with you on a payment plan to make it more manageable. Try instead. Help me understand. What would need to be true for this to work within your budget? And if there's no scenario where the numbers make sense, I'd rather know that now than have you regret this decision later. The second approach shows you're on their side, not just trying to overcome their objection. It gives them permission to say no, which paradoxically makes them trust you more when they do say yes. Never take no for an answer might be the first thing you learned in sales, but it doesn't have to be the thing that defines your career. Listen to objections, honor them, and watch what happens when your customers realize you're actually on their side. You might close the sale by pushing, but you'll build a career by listening. So don't just sell inspired.